Hey you guys, just want to show you a quick video how to use StatCrunch to find a weighted mean. So I opened up a homework problem here in 2.3, excuse me, and this problem is asking me to find the mean of frequency distribution, right? So this is equivalent to finding a weighted mean, right? So we don't know the exact data points, but we have the data points grouped into classes, right? Or sometimes called bins. So here are my classes over here on the left under the height heading, and then my frequencies on the right. So if you remember from the textbook, what they talk about is I'm going to use the midpoint for this class, which is 61. So if I look at the first class between 60 and 62, the midpoint there is 61, and then the frequency is 4. And then the midpoint for the second class is 64, and its frequency is 6. And then for the third class, the midpoint is 67, its frequency is 10, and the last class, the midpoint is 70, its frequency is 1. So if I was going to do this by hand, I brought up Wolfram Alpha, and I typed in the formula by hand, right? So here's the midpoint times the frequency for the first class plus midpoint times frequency for the second class, midpoint times frequency, midpoint times frequency, and then I'm going to divide by the total frequency, right? So 6 plus 4 plus 10 plus 1 is 21 total. So there's my weighted mean formula if I'm doing it by hand, and that turns out to be as a decimal about 65.14. And I think my math lab asked me to round to the nearest inch, right? So if I'm rounding to the nearest inch, I don't know what just happened there. If I'm rounding to the nearest inch, then this would be 65, right? 65. All right, now to use StatCrunch, so let's go back to my math lab window. So to use StatCrunch, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this little window button over to the right, and I'm going to choose to open in StatCrunch. So when I click open in StatCrunch, it's going to open this frequency distribution in StatCrunch for me. So again, here's my heights, and then here's my frequencies. So once I have my frequency distribution opened in StatCrunch, then I'm going to go to Stat, and I'm going to go to Summary Stats, and down here is the grouped bin data. So when I choose grouped bin data, right, my bins were the heights. So I'm going to choose the heights as my bin, right? And again, there were my bin is my height, and this won't move any further for me. And then my counts were the frequencies, right? And then what are the midpoints? So remember the midpoint, if I look at this first grouping here, right, is the average of the lower and upper class limit. So that's what this is right here. It's not consecutive lower. I'm not finding the average between 60 and 63. I'm finding the average between 60 and 62. So I'm going to choose limits, and then when I click compute, here's all of the descriptive statistics for that grouped data. And in particular, I'm interested in the mean. So you can see there's the same exact value we got from doing the formula by hand, and 65 would be the value rounded to the nearest inch. So let me check that answer, and there's our value.